A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Romans. Brothers, I beg you through the mercy of God to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, your spiritual worship. Do not conform yourselves to this age, but be transformed by the renewal of your minds, so that you may judge what is God's will, what is good, pleasing, and perfect. The word of the Lord. Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, your spiritual worship. As a living sacrifice. This is incarnational aspect that Christ himself became man for us to show us how to offer himself as a living sacrifice. And living in giving of himself. In a sacrifice not of just things, but of his own body and soul. An engagement in that living, that living in God. See, a sacrifice that is holy and acceptable to God. That everything that we do, everything that our bodies does is for God. Not for ourselves, not for anyone else, but for God. That is a living sacrifice. It is a spiritual worship that we're constantly worshiping God through everything that we do. Not just here in prayer, but that action that prayer leads us into. That we don't just get stuck, but that we move with the body and soul to meet others in need. It's like the question, how then we nourish our minds and our will so as to live as a living sacrifice? How do we nourish that soul in our bodies as we are one, that as we nourish the soul with God, that our body is an image of that which we are being nourishing with, of himself. That we become this sacrifice in trusting that God is there for us. That God is giving us what we need in order to live that spiritual worship, in order to worship him. That living sacrifice of the things that is dear to us and ourselves. It makes me think of Abraham and Isaac as he takes them up to the mountain to be sacrificed. In that spiritual worship of trusting in God that he can take care, that he is going to provide, and he does. He provides the sacrifice in the same way he's asking of us, do you trust me to give of yourself? To offer yourselves in that living sacrifice, to offer yourself in the spiritual worship, to give of who you are and allow me to make you who you're meant to be. It is a part of the new creation, a new journey, a journey that we take each day. It is offering our bodies in a living sacrifice that gives us the hope and the strength to walk forward. Gives us the strength to not conform ourselves to this age. To not conform to the old creation. To be able to receive the new wine and be new wineskins. To be able to receive the graces and the love and the strength that God is bestowing upon all of us. This is what we're doing this Lenten season. Is letting go of that old creation that we might still be attached to. And be able to receive the new creation which is Christ. Christ that wants to make us new, make us whole, make us who he has planned for us in his joy and his love for us to be. And as we work through that new creation, as we work through of letting go of that old creation, we may encounter different things in the world that I could call it like a labyrinth of life. We may encounter the world's expectation, what the world wants from me, What do I need to do for the world to be pleased with me? And God says, no, you're not of the world. I've called you out. Yet you still walk in the world, this old creation, but I've called you to be a new creation. And how he calls us then to be silenced to those world expectations, to be able just to be with God, to be able to allow him to transform us and to be closer with him. And if the world's expectation is not enough, then we have also the mirrors of like, this is who you are, and especially those distorted mirrors that we find those carnival places that kind of look funny. But then he continues to show us in this life, like, this is what you are, this is what you do, this is. And to be able to look at the mirrors and say no. To be able to be gentle with ourselves and to realize that we are not those distorted mirrors. That we have been made in the image and likeness of God. That we have a greater purpose than anything that we can do. And it's to love God, it's to be with God. And then we also have the voices of the past, the ghosts that continue to bother us and it pulls us away. The ghosts that we have maybe forgiven and we have asked for forgiveness to God 100 times and we still can't find that forgiveness. And we'll be able to silence those voices by accepting the forgiveness of God, the mercy that he is willing to bestow on you if we but open our arms. If we receive truly his mercy. No, he became man in compassion so that he can have compassion over our weaknesses, so he can understand that we are broken, that we're weak, that we need him. And in his mercy, he forgives us our sins. But we must accept it. We must accept that forgiveness if we are to continue to walk in the new creation, if we are to be living sacrifices holy and acceptable to God, if we are to be a spiritual worship. And then finally, in that labyrinth of life, then we might find ourselves. We might look and see us. And we respond with gratitude. With gratitude for the gift that God has made us to be. Not in pride, not in selfishness, but in true love, in true humility. To accept who we are in God. And be able to be transformed day by day. And as we walk this labyrinth, we don't walk it alone, but we walk it with Christ. Because he is our freedom. He is our life. And if we pretend to walk alone, then we will be lost. Then we will not be able to be, then we will conform to the world and not be able to achieve what God made us to be. That spiritual worship, that living sacrifice, that love, that he calls us to be. And in that, and as we are continuing that strengthening, we learn then to judge and to discern God's will. We learn to discern how he's inviting us every day to live in him and he in us. That he gives us the peace, the true peace, the peace that God is with us. Not the peace that everything will go away and that there will be no suffering, no trials, but the peace that even in the midst of all of it, we can turn to him and know that he, in his mercy and his love, is right there for us. And the joy that we aren't walking alone. That in this journey of new creation that he has made us, in this offering of ourselves, that he is right there with us. And what greater joy than that? Than to have the Lord, the God, the King of Kings, to be there next to us, holding our hands when he needs to, holding our arms, even picking us up when he needs to pick us up, but to be able to walk with us. And lastly, to be made perfect, perfect in God, that in our imperfections, God can bring perfection if we but just let him be, if we allow ourselves to be that living sacrifice that is holy and acceptable to God, that we are the spiritual worship, that God is there with us, that God continues to strengthen us to walk and to rejoice. So brothers and sisters, as we continue this journey of Lent, as we continue to walk in this desert with Christ who is leading us, as we continue to be this living sacrifice, that our penances may be a sign of joy for us, that we are being attached more and more to Christ and less to the world, that we may truly rejoice as living sacrifices, holy and acceptable to God. This hour, that spiritual worship that we're called to be.